Hey everybody, what's going on? This is Sean here with Design Theory, and I've got a new video for you that I'm really excited to put out. This time I'm sitting down with David Yarde with Sevenality, and we initially started talking about, or we were supposed to be talking about, how things are changing in terms of where you're able to host your media files, and how a lot of places would kind of offer them for free, maybe some photos and videos and things like that, up to a certain amount, and how that's starting to change, and what that responsibility is going to be like for creatives like us who kind of create video assets and photography assets and things like that, digital assets for our clients, where we kind of hold them in an area where they can access them. And now we're going to have to start to look for ways to start to offset that cost with them. Now, that conversation evolved into some other things that I think you'll really enjoy in terms of marketing and strategy tips. And if you follow myself or David around for a little bit, you know that, how we kind of talk about these types of things, and we do conversations and we do conferences and speaking engagements and panels and whatnot. And so you really, really enjoy this. And so without further ado, let's jump right into that video.
It is. I mean, I guess a segue into that is like tools and stuff to keep things secure, right? Or finding content.
Mm-hmm.
And I was actually pretty excited that you hit me up about this because there are two startups that hit my radar this year that we had to kind of like consult with. And ironically enough, one of them was customer experience journey mapping.
Ah,
Right at the time that like you were doing your thing, and I
yeah.
was like, "Oh snap!" And then Ali made the thing on Twitter, and I was like, "I'm not sure what's happening here." And just
That was kind of funny, wasn't it? It's like the
like, "All
universe
right,
was aligned,
cool."
man.
I'm like, "All right, well, here we are. We're just gonna do this thing." So
Yes.
yeah, I've been. I don't even know where my notebook is. That's actually what I'm looking around here for because I have like three or four of them that I write down in.
Yeah.
But it was like digital asset management and then
Mm,
machine learning powered asset management.
okay.
Um, because one of the tools, it was pretty cool.
Mm.
And it basically helps you write articles. And I hate AI generated content.
I'm seeing that. I'm seeing that out there.
Ooh, I
I,
hate
I'd
it.
love to. Well, wait. So wait, before you get, I don't want to cut you off, but I do want to get your opinion on that. What do you feel about
Uh-huh.
that? Like, why don't you like AI generated content? You think
I
it's
hate
inauthentic?
it
Do you think it's cheating? Like, what do
because,
you think?
I mean, no, it's not cheating. It's kind of like an advanced version of voice dictation if you really think about it.
Mm,
Um, but I feel that when people just rely on it solely
mm,
without, knowing of a content strategy, knowing, where this content fits in, it becomes that thing that people do with content now where all they're doing is just spitting it out.
mm.
Like I need to write content just because,
For
my
the sake of
guru or
doing it.
mentor told me to write 10
Right.
articles, a day.
Right.
Gary Vee told me I need to be
A
putting out
hundred.
150
Yeah.
pieces content a day. Like, are
Right.
you serious?
Right.
Like, people are just doing these things without realizing that, oh, if I'm putting out 150 pieces of content a day, it doesn't mean that I myself am generating 150 pieces of content. It means I am distributing 150 pieces of content, right? Creation, curation, and distribution are
Mm.
three different parts of this whole
Mm.
content strategy thing, right?
Preach.
And a lot of people look at creation and distribution as the same thing.
Hmm.
And it's cool when you're doing your, real life type thing, you're in the moment, you're behind the scenes, but you're still curating something, whether it's your expertise, whether it's, what is a day in your life like, what is this project like, what is this unique experience or problem that I'm trying to solve.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I feel like most people are just curating something that is an aspirational lie that they want to be.
Hmm.
And I say that as like, oh, the person that wants to flex, right?
Hmm.
Um, I have the car, I have the new laptop, I have the new smartwatch, I have,
New
all of
phone,
these
whatever
different
that is.
things.
Yeah.
But it's like, why do you have those new things? Are you teaching me the new features that are there? Are you teaching me how this made your life easier?
Hmm.
Or are you just like, chopping your life up into these ad blocks for companies that aren't paying you for doing
Mm.
these product, placements?
Mm.
So yeah, I mean, I have a lot of feelings lately, and it's because like I've had students go through this branding thing, And I've seen where, you know, you have that intention and hope where like, yeah, everybody's going to look at the impact driven side of it, you know, the part that helps us be more conscious as capitalists.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just see people gravitate to this, oh, I just want to have like the flashy website and logo, and I just want to get the press. And you're like, all right, cool. I'm glad you chose that.
Mm-hmm.
That makes my job easier because now I really cannot help you. Because that's easy. You could just get somebody to feature you on a podcast, and there you go. You got some press.
Sure.
But again, what are you curating that towards,
Mm-hmm.
right? What are you trying to create? Are you just creating for the sake of it?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so like I think a lot of the people that I've even been drawn to with content lately have been the people who are like, here's not only my experience, but here are the things that, you know, I'm going to go into my kind of like stretch zone and do, right? I'm going to take a little risk somewhere. I'm going to, gosh, this thing is bothering me. I'm trying to line up between these two lines, but it's not working. All right, here we go.
I saw you waving between it, and I was like either he's doing it because he likes it.
No, I don't, because like I have like the poster thing, and then my plant. Never mind. I'm overthinking all of this while I'm.
Don't worry about it. Yeah, forget all that, man.
This is ADHD in action, people. So yeah, when you like start thinking about like how content and creating and distributing it happens, you're like, all right, if I'm writing a book, I can use this book as a marketing piece and take people on a journey while writing the book, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
That solves two things, right? I'm curating audience probably for, you know, pre-order if I'm doing it right. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm, you know, building up other authors who are trying to write their thing as well. And yeah, I mean, there's like all these different little things that, you know, really, really make a huge difference. Take, for instance, our good buddy Joshua. You know, he's dropping his book right now, Venti Fried Chicken. And that's like a humorous, like little thing. And I'm like, wow, this is kind of fun. And you start looking at people's journey into tech and you're like, it's all different. We all should share it, right? Especially if it's unconventional, where you started life out doing something completely different. And then now you're probably programming, creating content, teaching people strategy. Share those things, have fun with it. So yeah, I think for me,
that's what makes it relatable.
Advice myself.
That's what makes it relatable, though. You know what I mean? Because it's like if the background story is something to where it's like, oh wow, you know, that touches me because I went through that, or I can relate to that in this way, or I was around that, or even if it's just, you know, I'm from there, or I wanted to do that and I stopped for whatever reason, and hearing this story from this other person that I can resonate with gives me the courage to continue on, or gives me the motivation to pick that back up and then do it, or take it from my mind, and instead of just being this thing that I thought that I couldn't do, to like, oh wow, well if they did it, then I can do it. And not for a competition reason, but just like, hey, I can now see someone that I can relate to and say, if they did it, then I can definitely do it too, you know?
Exactly.
It's encouraging.
I mean, representation matters, and I think people look and be like, oh, you have a brown person there, or you have a lady there. Like, there you go, representation. Mm-hmm. Sure. I mean, I didn't think it was possible to do a lot of things until I saw actual other Caribbean people doing it. And I was like, oh, we could do that too.
Right.
Right. And so, like, it isn't just like a person or a specific thing. It's like every walk of life kind of has something unique, unless you're out here bringing hate, right? Like anything along that route, like you hate people for whatever reason. It's draining being around people like that, right?
Yeah.
It's like you've gone out of your way to hate someone that you do not know just based on something somebody else said, right? Sure, I could be a little bit of apprehensive towards other people if I'm not fully sure of who you are. But that's just you as a stranger in my space. I don't know what you're about to do, right? So yeah, I mean, but to the topic at hand, I think this one though is pretty cool.
Okay.
Because we have, and here's a segue, right? Because I've been thinking about this. if we're creating more inclusive and diverse content, right, we should be able to tag them and reference them in ways that aren't, what's the way, offensive? I wouldn't say offensive, disrespectful,
Hmm.
right? Because if you ever look at like AI classification, sometimes it could be a little bit disrespectful.
Tell me
And the
more.
tagging.
I'm
All
not
right,
familiar. Tell me
so
more.
here's a good, let's see, what do I have around me over here? Oh, here we go, right? So I'm gonna grab this WordCamp. What is this? WordCamp Miami. I don't even remember what year this was. If anyone knows, you get a free book or something.
Uh,
Um, and so the AI would look at it or look at this picture, right? And it'd be like person, bag, plant, and then it will try to like say logo. And then if it knows what the logo is, it would say maybe WordCamp or WordPress, since you can see the little WordPress if it zoomed in. And then it would start getting more specific, right? It would then say black bag,
mhm.
right? Or, male, or, whatever the case is. And the
Okay.
next thing you know, you start looking and you're like, wait a second. If a person is naming these things and the person has an inherent bias,
Mm,
right? And you introduce that bias into the classification system,
mm,
segmenting, whatever you want to call it, right? The machine is now going to live by that
right.
bias, right? Which goes back to why you need to have diverse people in the room, right?
Right.
Um, we've seen how developers name things. It's
Mhm.
not always respectable. Um, sometimes things are named because it seems funny, right? And it may be not very culturally respected,
Mm.
right? And so there are a lot of those things that, yeah, it seems like a burden to say, oh, I have to learn about all these different things. But isn't that the whole point of being human being,
Sure.
right? Like learning about other things around
To,
you, right?
to go with your
Um,
to go with your example, I've got one
yeah.
because I think that now the conversation is finally being looked at to try to change this, and I think it's more. I think it's starting to change more on the photography side, and hopefully it gets through the rest of tech. But when as a photographer, if you have more than one flash, your main flash could be your master, and then your other
Mm-hmm,
ones could be the slaves. If you think
mm-hmm,
about, old school tech, well, not old school tech, but it's still that way today, like computer tech, it really, you have your main drive, which is, could be your master drive. And then every other drive that's, in that computer is the slave drive. And so they're looking at trying to
mm-hmm.
change the terminology instead of using master and slave to something else, and I think that that's great because it's like, again, whoever created that, that's what it is, like you say, right? So like if whoever
Yeah.
decided this is the terminology for A and B, and B is going to be called this, A is going to be called that, and that's what it ended up being for decades. And
It's wild.
it is, and then it's just adopted. It's almost not even. I think that it's probably not challenged, maybe just recently challenged, but it's probably questioned by a few, but not there's no boat rocking for it, or it's like, hey, I don't think this is right. Now it's just like that's
I
what it is. All
mean,
right, that's what it is.
you get so comfortable with it. And I feel in some ways like there was this video that I saw, and this black lady was saying that, how a lot of times white women treat black women that they should be grateful to be in the same room,
Mm,
right? And I mean, this is a thing that we all experience where it's like, oh, you're at the table, you should be grateful.
right.
And I'm just kind of like, you're making me feel like I want to burn down your table now because, like, we built the table.
Mm-hmm.
And, anyways, it's a whole different conversation.
Mm-hmm. I'm with
But
you. I'm with you.
that whole specific thing was just kind of like, how often are you placed in a room,
Mm-hmm.
right, to fill a quota or to do something in tech, but you're not given the room to actually be part of the equitable conversation
Sure.
around it?
Yeah. You're there
Um,
as a participant and almost for show, but not necessarily someone who can contribute, even though
exactly.
you have probably a lot to contribute, if not the most to contribute. Yep.
Right. And so it's like those little things where it's like you have to do it from both sides. Actually, all three layers, if you really think about it. You have to start at the top, you have to work with middle management, and you have to work with the people who are entering the field.
Sure.
Because those younger or newer people in the field may not know that they don't have to take that crap, right? And they may be thinking, oh, this is part of me entering the field and I have to pay my quote unquote dues, right? Wherein the only dues that you have to show up and pay is be good at what you do
Yep.
and try to be better than you were the last time you did the thing that you just did, right? If you mess up, own up to it and try to do better. Um, which I mean is a very oversimplified concept, but at the same time,
It's
it's
missed on
like
a lot.
it is, right? And like if you think about it, it's we hold ourselves to a double standard because we'll demand this of our kids and people who work for us, right? But we don't often demand it of ourselves.
Sure.
Um, and when we do, it really stings because you're like, wow, I could have been a better person, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the leaders that do that kind of self-awareness assessment and realize that, oh, I could be a little bit more lovable or a little bit more aware of what's going on, you find that like people like them more. Not necessarily because they're doing anything magical,
Right.
but it's the fact that they took the time to actually slow down and be a human being and realize that like, all right, if we want to build the innovative tools and platforms of tomorrow, we have to understand what are the problems people are trying to solve today and where are the tools missing from that conversation.
So I feel like you're entering the realm of customer service, because if you think about customer service,
Yeah.
ideally that's what we all want, no matter what venue, whether online or brick and mortar that we're walking into. We want to feel like, hey, I mean something. I walked in here. I've decided to spend my time, day, effort to get to this establishment, whether it's online or, and I want to be taken care of. I want to feel like I matter in what my choosing is going to be of this product or service. And I think that in a lot of cases, that sense of customer service is diminished. And in some cases for brevity or for convenience. In some cases, you don't necessarily need it. Like if you think about, one of my favorite examples of like customer service is Amazon, right? Because they run the gamut of like the far end and then the smaller end of it. The far end of it is like, I don't need to go into a store. I can just order something. It gets to me within a couple of days. I don't have to talk to anybody. However, if anytime I have an issue and I need to talk to somebody, I can readily call them. They answer the phone, and they're very. I mean, they're the most nicest people I ever. Every time I
got a
call all
question
the time.
for you. I got a question for you.
Yeah.
How can smaller businesses provide a similar scale of
do that.
Customer experience?
Yes. So I was going to lead into that, right? Because that's where we win. The small business owner has the ability to give that customer service to their audience, whether it's online or whether it's in person, because the best that they can do with giving that experience to the customer, the more the customer is going to want that experience back, no matter how much the price is, especially in situations where the price could be more than going into an establishment or going to the competition. They want if the experience is great, maybe the unpacking experience, the walking in experience, the purchasing experience, the question and answer experience, the response, the question to response experience, the product itself almost doesn't even, the product and price almost is almost secondary, if not third, to the experience. True. And so more times than not, as a customer, and I'll say from a customer side of things, I'll follow a brand regardless of price, low or high, if I know that the experience is going to be what I want it to be. Again, you do pay for your experience. And again, if you're looking for something that's, quick and easy, and it's like, I want to buy this thing, and even though I might have to buy it 3 times this month because it's going to break each time, I'm fine with that because the price is where I'm fine with, and that's fine with me, right? However,
inside these headphones.
Yes. And then the other side of that is like, well, I only want to buy this thing once a year. And when I do buy it, I want the durability to last. I want my experience when I buy it to be great. I want it when it shows up. It's not cracked. It's not broken. It's not chipped. It's not all of these things. It's, it's presentable. I feel good using it. I hold it, the quality is right. And I'm willing to pay a little bit more for that than I am willing to pay several times for this, even though for the cheaper one, I probably more than paid for 3 of the other ones. But that's just where I am. And so when it comes to a small business owner, whether it's, creative agency, whatever that it is, that's where you have to identify your customer. This is where we talk about, the avatar, the, things like that. Once you identify the customer and you say, oh, well, our customers, they like this. or they
I mean, it's
like
not everybody.
it's not everybody. And that's the problem, is that a lot of times when we start to, and I've done this, right? Where it's like, I get into business. When I first started my business, right? I was like, oh, I'm going to create websites for everybody. And I drove myself bananas.
Same
Because
here.
it was like, I was like, oh, I can, I don't understand this and I don't understand it. And I've got to learn this. I've got to learn that. And it's like, well, wait a minute. What if I just design something for just this industry? Well, then I can spend time understanding this industry, understanding what their needs are, understanding where that industry pivots, how it changes, how it grows, where there's vulnerabilities, where there's areas for me to supplement and then play a bigger role, understanding the competition, all of that stuff. I can be better that way versus trying to be somebody, trying to create a product for everybody that that I happen to lay my eyes on. And that, again, we can get into that. That's a whole other topic. But yeah, ultimately, coming down to customer service, that's a thing that I think that small businesses can really, even entrepreneurs, even if it's just a one person shop, you can really win by having that. And I think it's a testament to like you, to me, and a lot of our colleagues that have been in the industry for years. That's the reason why they've been around for so long, is because they've got their customer base for years. They've got people that have been with them that once they come on board, they're with them almost for life.
And I mean, you kind of wish that every customer is that way. And sometimes, I mean, the payout isn't even there to go and handhold them every step of the way.
Sure.
But you get in that habit of solidifying that as a process. And regardless of who enters in there, whether they stick through the whole thing or they decide that they want to like bail ship partway through, like they get, at least a consistent experience across those points. And if something fails, you know that, okay, well, where did it fail? Why did it fail? What was the circumstances around the failure?
Learn from it.
Yeah, and I mean, failure isn't the same thing as defeat. And I think that's the thing even I have to remind myself of, where it's like, oh, I failed. And then I may not want to try it again, where it's like, no, I didn't get defeated. And even if I did lose, I can still get back and win again, right? Like, that's the whole thing about football and sports, is like you try and keep winning somehow, right? But then, so here's the thing. Customer service, Google, and the whole thing that led us to here, like Google decided that they didn't want to do free storage anymore, right? Now, mind you, Google One is actually pretty cheap. It's like $1.99 a month, I think. And it allows you to get like unlimited, photo storage and stuff like that, up to a terabyte or something. I don't even remember. So they're basically licensing space that they've kind of overcreated or overgenerated back, whether it's through cloud services. Well, I mean, it's primarily through cloud services, or in some cases, longer term storage, right? Now this has created a problem where everybody's like, oh no, what do I do? I'm like, well, I mean, I don't know. Back in the day, we had Photo Bucket, which was pretty cool.
I remember that. Yeah.
We had Mediafire, which was kind of cool. Now you have WeTransfer, which is not kind of the same, but it kind of is in some ways if you want to transfer files. The market has gotten fragmented.
It is.
Like,
but wait though. But wait. Let me play the angry customer, right? I've been using this for free for the past how long? Why isn't it free anymore? Why do I have to pay for it? I've moved all my photos over there. I've moved all my assets over there, and that's how I.
So my question to you would be: are you making money off of it?
Yep.
And or even estimated.
Yep.
How much do you think you've made off of it?
Oh man, more than now this is us talking, more than $1.99 a month. But
see,
not gonna admit that to you. You know what I'm saying? The average the average
it's like
customer is gonna be no, this shouldn't be. I'm used to this, right?
It's kind of like how I treat people who are into conspiracy theories, where they're like, oh, this is just kind of like the flu, and then I'm like, you believe the flu is real? And then you start this look on their face, and they're like, how do I out crazy the crazy? And this is the question that I ask. It's like, all right, cool. So you made a ton of money off of this, right? You've, had the ease of all of these things. If they charge you $2 a month, do you think that's fair? Right? Like, if you think about it, that's cheaper than a Starbucks drink.
Sure.
That's cheaper than a lighter.
Come on.
That's cheaper than, I mean, What was the last thing I bought for $2?
Uh,
Cotton balls, a
okay.
dollar 89 at Target. All right,
All
so
right.
that's the closest thing. You think about that. Cotton balls used to be 99 cents, 50 cents, something
Okay.
like that, right?
Hmm.
Um, so there's inflation now, right? So more people are storing things, more people are storing higher quality things,
There you go.
and we want it faster,
There you
right,
go.
when we store it.
Hmm.
So how do we mitigate this? Well, we have to put engineers and designers and creatives on this task to save things faster, be able to disperse them quicker, make sure that if you're traveling, halfway around the world, that you can still get your files with a good quality,
Hmm.
right? Um, all right, cool. How much is that going to cost? All right, well, I mean, a decent team for that, you're looking at a burn rate of anywhere of 3 mil north per what quarter just for that,
Hmm.
right? Cool. They're charging you $2 a month. All right, you get to upload everything that you want to upload,
Hmm.
right? Fair enough. Now let's look at the business owner who's trying to start something, right?
Hmm.
Every dollar matters, right? I
Hmm.
just bought my domain name for like $8 or $12, depending on where I got it, right? Maybe a buddy of mine knew how to set up, a website where I could use Let's Encrypt, so I saved some money on my SSL certificate,
Sure.
all right. All right, but still, I need to find like a template or something. That's anywhere from 40 to 60 to plus, however, whichever platform I'm on.
Hmm.
All right, maybe I have to buy some plugins or I have to buy some subscriptions.
Hmm.
All right, now I have to figure out a tool that helps me organize all my photos
Mm.
with the power of machine learning,
Mm.
right? That's going to get pricey.
Mm.
Okay, Google has become evil now. We're going to run with that theory. We don't want to give
Mm.
Google the power. What do we
Mm.
do?
Mm.
So now we have this huge marketplace that has opened up where you have Apple photos. I mean, they're not really storing them and shelling them out that way. All right. I could put my photos on Instagram, but what if my profile gets deleted? I don't want to do
Mm.
that. All right. Um, who are some other third-party people? We got Jetpack, which is kind of cool.
I see that.
I actually use them for uh, lovable brands and the whole video uploads because it's
Okay.
unlimited video, right? High quality video.
Hmm.
Um, what else is there?
I think Flickr still does
YouTube,
photo storage. Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Flickr.
Yep. YouTube's got
Um,
storage. I think there's what's the we talk about retransfer, but shoot, what's the other one? Hang on, let me see if I have it on my notes. I think there's one called Hightail that does that too. And Drop, no, not Dropbox,
Dropbox. How could we forget Dropbox?
Dropbox, yeah. And then Box. I think Dropbox and Box are two different storage companies. Yep.
Amazon Photos, right? There's
Amazon, and
also
then
that too, right?
and Microsoft
Shutterfly,
has what is it? They have OneDrive. That's it.
right? So all of these things exist in
Hmm.
some way, shape, or form. But a lot of them miss this one vital thing, right?
Mm.
Like, so photography, we take a lot of pictures,
Hmm.
and tagging all of those pictures is a feat, right? If I'm writing an article and let's say my organization has amassed, 300 brand artifacts just within the past 2 days.
Mm.
All right, I need to be able to pull those artifacts and say, all right, I have 50 videos, I have 20
Mm.
PDFs, I have, 10 pictures all around, let's say,
That
the
actually is
Orlando
really good
Eye.
software. Now that you say that, is there something out there that does that? Because that
I
would
may
be
know a
nice.
company that's working on something. Um,
Man, go on.
But these are the things, like, if you think about it, it would make life so much easier
Mm.
because now, if we're talking about true automation of branding and
Mhm.
technology being the proper extension of a human being in the business space,
Mhm.
you have this ability where it's like we can literally say, hey, we have an intern. I need you to create, this article on the 10 reasons why, Santa Claus isn't real
Mhm.
and 3 people who've actually embodied the meaning of Santa Claus in the real world.
Mm.
All right, they should be able to go into a database, see whatever the company has written about Santa Claus, whether it's published or unpublished, see the pictures that are there, and be like, okay, cool. here are some articles we can use where we wrote some things about this person who was doing this thing, that person doing that
Mm-hmm.
thing. And then here's a repertoire of, 10 local pieces. Let's say we have regional offices and we want this to be unique per area. So then it would say 10 people in, or 3 people in Chicago, 3 people in Florida, and it's
Okay.
pulling from local regional thing. And
Yep.
you're able to utilize, like, here's what we did in Chicago, here's what we did in, Florida, here's what we did over here. I mean, content should be fun. Like, the more you're able to see it, like people like Leonardo da Vinci and all that stuff, we thought they went through some great glorious process to create content.
Mm-hmm.
These people are out here throwing stuff on the wall,
Mm-hmm.
like literally just throwing stuff on the wall and being like, I wonder what shape this is going to give.
Yeah.
And then it came out and they're like, sphere. I'm like, what?
Yeah. But
What?
I think that we, well, let me ask you this. In the
Mhm.
world that we live in right now, where there's so much content being created by everybody on all different types of levels, do you think that there's more stage fright for trying to put out anything, let alone something that's good? And then so
Yeah.
because of that stage fright, you end up not creating something for the sake of like, I don't know that it's good enough.
I'm a personal example here to that whole theory where I have not created certain pieces of content simply because of the stage fright, where it's like,
Really?
yeah, I
Tell,
mean,
tell me more, man. Why? What you? Why?
I don't know. I
Here's
mean,
my own excuse.
there are a couple of reasons why. I think when you realize the responsibility of your content, and that you're not just creating it for the sake of clout, you want it to actually be used in the right way. Or you don't want someone to be like, oh, I was depending on you and then you failed.
Mm,
I think that's the first part.
mm. So
The
accountability.
second part, yeah, but the second part I think for me is like, there's an Eminem line that keeps going back in my mind where it's like not being able to top what you feel like was your best. And
Mm,
it's like, can I raise the bar on myself? Right.
mm,
Other people are like, oh, yeah, you're doing fine. You're doing great. Like, I love this. Like, here's the results that I got from this. But like deep down inside, you're like, but that's not even like 20% of what I could put out. Like, and then you try to figure out what that perfect thing is, and then you start over analyzing or over engineering, and then you just don't put anything out. And then a lot of my content lately has also been around client work, so it's one-on-one content creation, and then a lot of curriculum creation. So it's like switching from that level of like creating content to being like, all right, I'm gonna create micro content. It's like, in my mind, what I'm seeing is if I create this piece of content, I have to create this. I need to create a workbook. I need to
mm,
create a landing page for you to
mm,
download.
mm,
I need to create, and so it's like not just a singular piece of content.
mm.
Uh, you realize like, oh, then you start feeling overwhelmed by everything that you
Yeah,
have to
yeah,
create,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Um, and then to the normal person, it's like, oh, but you're creating all this cool content. Like your tweets are doing good. Like
yeah.
people are replying to you. Like they're constantly in your DMs and like inviting you places. And I'm like, do you realize most of this stuff is that we've just been friends for so long and we got lonely? And we're like, who else is out there that's talking about these things that we're interested in? And let's just create that content.
Mm.
And so, yeah, it's interesting.
So that's my thing right there. That was my excuse, is the pipeline of everything else, right? So
Mhm.
let's use this as an example, right? So we're talking here. This is on video. At the end of it, I'll edit and we'll put it out there, and then it's like, but there's sound bites that we could pull from this, and then we could do audio with that. Then there's hot takes we could pull from this to use as like pre-roll, or we can use for like social, so maybe LinkedIn or Instagram. And
Mhm.
then there's stripping the audio and then doing a blog post out of it, so that way then that's there. And then putting the full video maybe on like on Facebook and YouTube, and then whoever wherever, maybe on our website, what I'm saying, like there's
Yep.
all of those things. And then like you said, you, so every time that I do a presentation, like in my mind I'm like, Boom. It should be a presentation. Then there should be some, I've got to convert them into images so I can put them into a blog post so that way they're slides and you can actually see the slides. Then I got to put it into a PDF so that way you can download the whole thing. Then I've got to put, the whole one, because then I have a presentation that I do that has my notes and stuff like that doesn't have all of the text. And then there's an actual full version that I have to do that has all of the stuff that I would typically talk about if you watched me live, but that if you just downloaded the slides, it would be a little bit out of context because not everything is in there, right? It's just the talking points and bullet points. So now I've got to do that. And then I've got to, condense it or show it in a certain way so that way it presents well on different types of social platforms, especially when it comes to videos. Like, well, now I've got to do a square version or I've got to do a certain type of version for Instagram, but then I've got to do
captions in it. Right?
I put captions in it. And I've got to do one specifically for LinkedIn. And a certain, it's like, so just to think about that whole pipeline, as you said it, it's like, I don't even want to do it. Nah, don't worry about it, man. I'm good.
And people don't realize this, and they'll hit up like a social media manager or, a virtual assistant or someone and be like, oh yeah, I want to pay you $150 for like, however many hundreds of posts. And you're looking at this person like,
yeah.
Are you okay?
Yeah.
Are you well?
Yeah.
Would you go to your doctor and say like, doc, I know that I have to have this surgery, but I don't think I need the anesthesiologist there. You went to medical school, right? You could do this. We could save some money if you did this, right? Like that logic blows my mind.
Mm-hmm. But see, this is the thing though. I go back to what you're saying about, that's why I asked you about AI content generation is like, it's another tool that makes that hard part easier or takes the task off of you. Right?
Nah, see. So,
but wait. So let me preface the argument because I want to hear. That's why I like to bring stuff back.
I see where you're going.
You see where I'm going. So then it's if we're supposed to be amassing these tools to make our everyday lives a little easier and so on and so forth, and that's what it's going. Because I mean, if you remember what it was to handwrite code in HTML and then put it up there and then see if it rendered right or whatever. Now we've got WordPress that does a lot of the stuff for us. That evolution, now not saying that there's not, that we still don't need to code certain things, but the amount of stuff that we would have to code by hand, now that we have WordPress there and certain plugins and things like that, is, come on, man, way different, right? It's like, come on, night and day. I can literally put up, a 5-page website, probably an hour. So you see what I'm saying with that? So it's like, if we have these tools that are supposed to do these things, but then we still can't use them in that way, why? And I'm just playing fun. I know the answer, but why? Right?
All right. So I want to say is because there is no purpose to things that are being created. They're simply there because I can, right? A lot of people are doing look, just because we can, we should definitely do this, right?
Yeah.
And quite honestly, no, right? Like I can buy all free expression. I can shout at people and be like, hey, if you don't get baptized, you're going to hell. Who does that serve? Nobody. It does not serve anybody because I didn't approach the person with love, right? I didn't approach the person and say, oh, hey, how you doing, right? Like I noticed that you were behaving a way that indicated you may need a meal or two, right? Let's go grab a bite to eat. What's your story?
Out of context, and it's out of context, and it's what's the other word I was looking for? It's not it wasn't warranted. So it's like I don't even know where you're coming from for me to just project this to you. But go ahead.
Context and relevancy. Those two things, right? So I think when we look at like all the tools that we have for creation of everything, right? Like you have your stuff that will figure out the right hashtags, the right time for you to post, the right articles for you to write, right? But are people really asking those questions? Right? Like we're creating things and trying to track metrics without understanding what's being generated, right? Because a lot of times people know how to create content, right? They're doing it every day. Right. What they don't know is how to create content that converts a person from point A to point B, right? Or content that tells a story in a way that is succinct, that captures the audience, that doesn't
Compels,
take
right.
them,
Provokes
you
it
know,
on.
all the way around the world before it gets to the point, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And a lot of times people create content in echo chambers, right? Where it's like everybody's just telling you it's great because they don't want to have that uncomfortable conversation with you.
Yep.
I would much rather someone roll up on me and be like, you know, I really hated that podcast because I thought this was a topic that we were covering. And when you were done, yeah, I learned a lot, but I didn't learn that thing that I was going in there for. And I'd be like, I appreciate that.
Right.
They'd be like, all right, what were you hoping to learn? Because I thought this was covering that topic, right? Versus somebody being like, oh, your podcast sucks. I'm like, all right, that's great. So do you. Because I didn't really like, that was so unconstructive.
Right.
Like, I don't know what to do with it. Now
Right.
I'm going to give you a petty response.
Right.
And I think like we miss how easy these principles of science are. For every reaction, there's an equal or positive or negative reaction,
Sure.
right? Even philosophers said this before there was a scientific equation behind it, right? They're like, Moses, he came out with a simple eye for an eye, and God was like, hold on, let's slow her roll there. That could be pretty dangerous, right? But all of these things require balance.
Mm-hmm.
If I have a tool that could pick out the right hashtags, but the content that I'm creating sucks, even if I have the right hashtag, no one's gonna care, right? If I'm just yelling content out, thinking that I'm in the old broadcast radio era where people were forced to listen to what I have to say, no one's gonna show up to that either, right? They're gonna be like, oh, cool, this person thinks I don't have a choice. Let me go find somebody else, right? And the algorithm will do that itself, where it'll be like, oh, 30 people hopped in this video and stayed only for 3 seconds. We're not going to keep promoting this, right? But then it may see another video and it's like, oh, 10 people jumped in here and stayed for 3 minutes. Let's give it to a larger number of people and see what happens, right? Because it's basically just performing science. It's science equation. Oh, we give it to this number of people. They seem to like it. They seem to engage with it. Let's keep giving it to more people. And the more people you give it to and the more people they engage with it, oh, okay, people are sharing this on top of it. That means they really like this. It's simple. You go back to the old days when you had to post things on like the Post-it board and down at your like little coffee shop or, you know, mailbox or whatever. And it's
library,
like, oh, yeah, library. And it's like, pull one if you need childcare. And you're like, huh, this seems interesting. I'm just going to trust a random stranger on a piece of paper out in the middle of nowhere to watch my child. Like, go have a good time, right? But then on the internet, where we have the ability to do actual research on people, we don't. We just take things for face value and be like, oh, did you hear that this thing is, you know, going to kill us? Like, if we take it? For crying out loud, we're at that point in life where it's like the information is overflowing, right?
Yeah.
Sure, not everyone is able to understand and decipher information, which is something I'm also learning recently. To some people, it's just kind of like a foreign language. Like, what do I do with this, right? But that comes back to, again, this we as influencers, leaders, community leaders, content creators, that's our responsibility, right? Like, if I'm telling a person, oh, to lead at a higher level means that you need to take care of yourself, what I'm saying is you need to take care of your mental, physical self, not just go out and like get drunk and call it self-care. There's levels to this, right? Like, that's more of the deconstructing, reconstructing self-care, kind of dangerous, but sure. And so, like, yeah, I think the demands of creating content really have knocked us off the purpose of why we create content to begin with.
Let me ask you this, because I definitely want to make this a part 2, and if anything, we'll end up making this a series. But last question for this, for right now. What are your feelings on evergreen content? And should we spend more time? And for those that are watching that don't understand, evergreen content essentially is creating content that will stand the test of time. It's relevant now. It'll be relevant in 10 years, or relevant in a longer period of time, other than just right now. How much how much of the content that we should be creating, are creating, should we put focus on or try to create focus on being evergreen? What's your take on that?
As much as possible, to be quite
Yeah,
frank.
really?
Like if you really think about it, nature does this naturally. Um, they have seasons, right?
Mhm.
It's the same tree, but it has cycles that it goes through each season.
Good point.
Crops do this, right? Strawberries, bell peppers, whatever plant you want to call it, right? Um, I like the idea of regenerative content,
Mm,
which is something I've been playing into, where it kind of is a space between evergreen and constantly relevant, right?
okay.
So let's say we're talking about the history of leadership, right? That would generally be an evergreen content. But if we're talking about the top 10 leadership books that were released this year, that's a little bit more specific,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now that's more, it could still be evergreen if a person was looking back and being like the top 10 leadership books released in 2020. Now it's curated kind of, evergreen content. But in that moment, it could be a lot more just specific, right?
Mm,
A better example, like most things, if you think about it, are really evergreen. How to change the brakes in a car. Like there's going to be someone that's always going to have that specific year model between 2014 and 2018, right? Um, so if nature does it, these things exist naturally in every other area, then why don't we try to give our businesses a little bit more sustainability in the problems that they solve, right? Um, like if you're starting out, why are you so passionate about it? Okay, cool. You're passionate because no one else was sharing these things and you had to learn this the hard way. All right, cool. Well, what were you trying to accomplish? Oh, I was trying to accomplish getting grant for my business. All right. What were the steps that you went through? Oh, well, I realized that, I could either become a grant writer or I could learn, from the top grants that were recently funded. Oh, that's a different approach, right? Like no set path is perfect because another person may have been like, oh yeah, my cousin was a grant writer and they told me this is what I needed to do. And when I did it this way, it worked. And then I had to do it again and it didn't work. So I had to learn a new route. Now I know two different ways of writing grants, right? Experiences.
mm,
Even some of our favorite books, or my favorite books, like Swiss Family Robinson or Anne Frank. These are just all experiences of people that been through things and was like, here's how we not get in this position again,
mm,
right?
mm,
Um, Sometimes we listen, sometimes we don't.
for sure.
Um, but yeah, I mean, evergreen content is actually a lot more simple than it seems. I think unless you're in pop culture and writing about TV shows and the latest shoes and fashion, or the latest product releases, then you actually have a chance to create a lot more evergreen content that may be aware. And heck, you could even dive into the history of these things. Like,
Mm,
hey, what's the history of, like this thing is a Corksicle cup, right? But I put a black Batman sleeve on it. So it's like, oh, that's my own little story of like my limited edition Corksicle Batman thing until they do an official release, right?
mhm.
Who knows? Now people are like, what is Corksicle? Oh, well, it's like a little cup that keeps things either hot or cold for a really long time. Oh, isn't that like what is it, Yeti cup or whatever?
Yep, yep.
Similar, but
Mhm.
this was made here in Orlando. And then you're
Ah,
like, oh, I didn't know Orlando had like manufacturing to that level. Yeah. And it's actually pretty. And so now you can dig deeper into like local content,
yeah, I like the example.
adjacent
Yep,
content. You can relate it to your own personal being. Like, I
yep,
love Batman. People call
yep.
me Batman. That makes sense.
Mhm.
Right. Like, there are so many different things where you pick any one of those. Cups, they've been around for a while.
For sure,
Batman has been around for a while.
for sure.
Manufacturing has been around for a
Mhm.
while. Evergreen on the surface,
Orlando's
and
been
you
around
could,
for a while.
Orlando has been around for a while, right? You dig into any one of those and you can start creating a lot more relevant things that keep educating people, taking people on a story, on a journey. Yeah.
That's man. So that was actually a really really good example. I love that, and I think that a lot of times we don't really put that in perspective, I'm not going to call it writer's block, but I think that, you know, a lot of times when we're thinking about like, what do we think is going to be relevant, or what do we think is going to be good for me to talk about, or what in my experience is worthy of my experience? Because like a lot of times, I'll say this and I'll let it go, but a lot of times when we would get together, whether it be at WordPress meetups or WordCamps or whatever, a lot of times it's just us sharing our own experiences to see if anybody else has had the same experience, so that way we could validate that, wow, okay, great, that wasn't just me, or that was interesting, I didn't know about that, I should watch out for that, or I should look for that, or I should try for that. And so we're kind of sharing those experiences, and that experience sharing is valuable for everybody that's there. A lot of times we joke about this all the time. It's like those hallway discussions are sometimes, you know, more valuable to us sometimes than the actual presentations that are happening in the rooms, you know,
Yeah.
just you know, adjacent to us. So
Oh man.
those are things that we don't always think about. And I think that for those that are, you know, watching this, is that, you know, just as David was saying, like your experience is of value to the people that are around you, you know, whether it's, you know, your customers, client base, and your audience, understanding all of those facets of why this product or why this service and the things that tie to it is very much relevant. It's not boring. It's not redundant. It's not overstated. The way that you say it is unique. The way that you present it is unique. And that's what we're about, is how do we like your presentation? We're, you know, we assimilate to you as the business or the presenter, creator, whatever that it is. You know, does that make sense?
Yeah. I think David Bissett from WordCamp Miami was the one that kind of made it very clear. It was like, don't just rely on one thing, especially when you're submitting to conferences. There are a bunch of experiences that you've gone through, a bunch of things that you could bring to the table. So, you know, it may be a situation where, you know, you're creating content or you want to be a speaker and you're like, oh, I'm never getting accepted. Well, are you looking at what's happening in the community, or are you just trying to show off your ego like, oh yeah, I built 10,000 WordPress websites in a year? And those of us that know would be like, all
Yeah.
right, mm,
Right.
right? And so it's like taking that time, and I forgot who it was. I think it was Sam from our local WordPress,
Okay.
where he did the first keynote, and it's like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
he was coming from being a firefighter
Yep.
into being a developer,
That's a
and
story.
you're sitting there and you're like, so my guy, you're protecting people,
Mm-hmm.
and now you want to do code.
Mm-hmm.
Which one of these do you feel is more frustrating, people or code, right? And now he has like this whole story where he can merge together, like, yeah, you know, this is what I used here and learned, or here's like a firefighter trick that I brought over to here. Like, that's life.
What's dope about that is like, I'm not a firefighter, but there was a lot of things that he said that was like, oh wow, I can relate to that.
Yeah. And you're like, okay, I respect firefighters more
Yeah,
now. Like,
for
you
sure.
know,
Even more. Right,
yeah,
right.
right. It's like, maybe I should become a firefighter and
Hmm.
then come back to WordPress and see if I'm gonna love it even more. Like
Yep.
maybe, or what is WordPress doing for firefighters?
Mm.
Right? Like, so yeah, I mean, content drives everything. Content is communication, just in a different form. It's kind of like its own way of energy, right? If
Hmm.
energy was put into communication, that's what it would be, content. Yeah.
Yeah,
We'll figure out that theory one day.
yeah. I like
Um,
it. I like it.
yeah.
I like it.
I mean, it has different states, right? You
It
have
does.
video content,
Hmm.
right? You have audio,
Hmm.
you have
Written form.
text,
Hmm.
right? You have mixed media,
Hmm.
you have, you know,
Yep. Still
augmented
image, video.
reality, which is
Yep.
like sensory in
Hmm.
some
Yeah,
cases,
yeah, yeah.
right? You got your haptic feedback if you like
Hmm.
something and it gives you a little vibration, right? Like,
Hmm.
yeah.
And all of those are things that we, you know, we kind of you know, not say gravitate to, but we enjoy, right? Where it's like it could be gratifying to us in certain ways that we may not even realize, but you know, they are like you said, when you said haptic, and I was like, yeah, like whenever I'm doing something and I get a haptic feedback for it, you know, it's gratifying for me and I enjoy that, and I may do more of that just to get that feeling.
Mhm.
Or you know, I specifically like a certain creator for the way that they explain or the way that they do their videos. And so I'm always going to be, I get gratification from that. and maybe I get how do you say, inspiration from that as well, and all
Yep.
these other things that come out of it. But I think that it's great that I say this, it's great that we live in a time where through the internet we're able to create in all of these different facets, and use the rules and then break the rules and then make our own,
Mhm.
to then be able to be creative and unique in our own way. And so, like, for that, I think it's super, super. I love that. And every time I see somebody new that's doing something, like, I never get jealous about it. Where it's like, if you see somebody who shoots, maybe they shoot Lake Eola, and how many times we've seen, Lake Eola at sunset, it's a million photos.
Sure.
But then, like, I'll see one, it's like, that's a fantastic photo. It's like, I got to give it up. That is a fantastic. I would have never thought to shoot it in that way at that time, in that perspective, whatever.
You know,
You know,
right now I'm really low key jealous of the creativity of Gen Z.
really.
It's like so we're the Photoshop, image ready, the Corel Draw,
Mm-hmm.
the bulky computer programs,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's how we created stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The Apple Motion,
Mm-hmm.
After Effects. That's
Mm-hmm.
how we put
Okay.
all of
Yep.
our stuff together.
Yep.
But the things that they could do with on-platform creative tools,
Mm-hmm.
like, and just looking at TikTok in itself, like,
Yep.
they do animation transitions on platform, and a lot of it is just simply timing. And you're sitting there and you're like, I thought my brain was crazy,
Yeah.
but can I just sit down and watch y'all create content for a
Yeah.
second?
So you actually, that's convicting for me, because my son, he uses an app on his phone to do his video editing, and he does gaming or whatnot, and so he'll just do his animations in there. He brings in other audio effects in there, and he's doing everything that I typically do in Final Cut. Um, Maybe not the same, and so and this is where I feel like I'm showing my age, or at least I'm showing age, right? Because it's like he's doing stuff and he's totally fine with it. He's growing his YouTube channel, people are enjoying it and things like that. And I'm like, but you're doing it wrong. You need to use this, and it needs to be like this. And like you said, they're creative in their own way and able to like pump it out throughout without even having to, jump through the hoops that I'm jumping through. And they're still creating content. They're creating really good content through the ways that make sense for them. And they have they have the ability to use all these different things, whether it's just on their phone and not an actual computer. Like that's liberating, and I have to remember that and not chastise them when it's like, no, you need to do it this way, because if you're going to do it,
Nah, I just roll up on them
it's going to
now
be
and I'd
like
be
this.
like, so there's a youth group that I used to help with a couple of years back at my local church. And I would just roll up on them like when they were doing like TikTok videos. And I'd be
Yeah.
like, how do you do this, this, and this, right? And they'll break it down like, all right, so you want to like take the phone and then move it this way for 10 seconds and then release and I'm like, all right.
All right. All right.
Okay, cool. And then when you look at like some of the transition effects and you're like, really, that's all you did? You just dropped your phone? Oh, okay, cool. So you're telling me you dropped a nearly 1,000 piece of
Right.
equipment. Oh, okay. I would never have that, level of risk where I'm like, this is a supercomputer. Like, I want to baby it. I'm going to put it in a case. I'm going to put a screen protector on it. And they're just like, nah, this is equipment. It's a tool. We're going to use
That's
it.
what I was going to
I'm
say.
like,
Right. It's a tool.
all right. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's inspiring watching
It
them,
is.
though. They will burn things down, and
Yep.
we told them to. So,
Yep.
yeah.
I'm with it.
Yeah.
I'm with it, man. Look, this is, even that tidbit was actually really, really good. I'm gonna go and hug my son now. And props. But no, this was good, man. I know this kind of came in on a whim, but this was really good. I'm glad that we were able to get together. Let's do this again, really soon and talk more.
Sure.
I know we could start on the content and then it'll just spider off into the other things, but I know we hit a lot. So this was fantastic, man. I really appreciate you taking the time with me.
It was fun. I should probably do more impromptu content. I think I've been having a lot more fun with it lately. So, yeah.
Let's do it, man. Let's do it. Let's do it.
All right.
I'll talk to you later.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.